You are likely interested in philosophy and spirituality, and you likely feel this yearning in your chest, this sense of belonging to somewhere else. And you can sense it, right? That this place here is actually quite insane, meaningful, but it has to be somewhat of an illusion. So in this video I will take this sense you have and use reason and logic to explain why it is real, why it is true, and what God really is. I was certain that anyone who believed in God was dumber than me. God obviously doesn't exist. Only look at all the chaos and evil. So whenever I used to talk to people, I divided them into two categories. People intelligent enough to know that God doesn't exist, and naive people who have fallen into religious superstition and delusion. I was pretty certain that this was the case because I used to be a Christian, and when I became an atheist, I saw how obviously deluded I was, and that there was no way I could ever go back to anything similar to this. And oh boy, how wrong I was. Because as long as you keep looking for the truth will find you, and it's way more incredible than you think it is. And yes, it's not like some Christian belief system, it is way deeper than that. God was superstitious dogma, like a moral judgment and anti-intellectualism to not make me question reality. Society subconsciously believes that God is dead, right? Nowadays at least. It is not cool to believe in God anymore. Since Nietzsche, we've moved past all of this God nonsense, as if it doesn't affect us. But isn't it curious how we have scientifically evolved, but spiritually we have devolved? Society is getting unhappier by the year. Depression is rising. Men and women hate each other like never before. And AI seems to take the last bit of creativity away from us and posing an existential threat. So everyone is looking for money and fame to fill the pain of their void. But it's actually the journey to figure out what God really is that every person and the entire society is after. If we were closer to that, well, then we wouldn't be so depressed and anxious and confused about our own existence. So either God is true and the word God points to the actual reality we are living in, and we can logically reason our way to it, not just as trust me bro, or God doesn't exist. The entire point of philosophy is to find the ultimate truth, like the actual universal answer to all of your existential questions. This is the truth that connects us to the Godhead, the center of all being. Many philosophers tried to point to this over time, and if you have studied philosophy and looked into philosophical literature, they have weird overlappings through very old religious traditions. So we have first the idea of Plato's form, which is the ultimate good, where God and virtue lies. Then there is Heidegger's understanding of being, where being is the essence of all. There's also Spinoza's universal nature as the source of all. And then there are of course all of these very important Eastern traditions like the Eastern thought of the Tao. These are all attempts to articulate an ultimate foundation of reality. Each branching philosophy finds their own word for whatever God could mean. But no matter what you want to call it, the thing that all ideologies are trying to point to is God. Not as some concept, not as some hypothetical, not as some theory, but the actual thing itself. And this is the reason why you're even interested in philosophy in the first place. It's that yearning. There's a game that is being played on a cosmic level. The cool thing is that you, as a human, have the incredible capacity to actually figure it out. Like to figure out the rules of the game and to become one with them. This is often called bliss or heaven. And to gain a complete understanding of this game is to gain a very deep understanding of what God is. It is to become one with it. But what humans have done is they have taken the actual nature of reality and then they have personalized it. And as long as you think in classical religion's terms about God, well, your beliefs will keep you blinded by the separation, blinded by judgment. It is actually any sort of judgment that you experience in your life that is what is keeping you away from God. Really, any type of judgment and insecurity is what makes you think you're separate from it. And these can be very, very fundamental and very difficult to untangle. This is why this journey is so deep. and very few understand what is actually going on. When I was a Christian kid, I thought God as a loving entity, but also as a judgmental entity, like a parent. Somebody that can just do everything, has all the power in the world, and then looks out to me all the time, but kind of also judges my actions. It was the guiding idea behind good and evil for me. And I remember this moment in a shower where I was like probably 7 years old. I was so young, and I had this yearning and this feeling of, oh, I really, really would like to be God. I just feel like I need to be God. And I was 7 or 8 years old. And I mean, at this point, I didn't think about it. I was just a kid. But now I see that this is actually a connection to something way more profound than I could have ever imagined. But then I saw adults disagreeing with what God's judgments were about, or what God's judgments were. I saw adults using God to judge others and control others, and oftentimes even to judge themselves in certain like hypocritical ways. I saw that everybody had different versions of right and wrong. So I started to realize that God is much more a projection of people's own minds instead of something genuinely real. I learned that the mind creates the idea of something so much above you, only to judge yourself. The idea of God had been used to control yourself through the control of society. And I saw this at when I entered my teen years. And this was a shock to my entire belief system, to my entire understanding of life. When the veil of God dropped and I stopped believing in it as something that is actually real and something that is just in people's heads, well, then I felt like I saw reality for the first time for what it actually is. And this caused me also to feel more alone than I've ever did before. This became like a sort of delusionment, but also like an awakening. I fell in love with the grounded data-driven approach of science and philosophy, trying to explain it all. But in a way, it was just a movement towards destroying the silence. It is a feeling of yearning and sadness and this sense that I'm alone in this world, and it cannot be the case that how truly alone I really am. And this is what moves people, or what moved me at least, to understand all of this stuff. So people are really looking for parental figures to be judged by, as if they need something external to validate all judgments they feel. As if without a fatherly figure, people fear that the foundation of good and bad gets lost, and therefore you lose all the idea about what you are as a person, what your worth is as a person. If there is no entity that gives a standard for good and bad, who's to say that your existence is truly meaningful? If you completely let yourself be who you are, well, what prevents you from then doing horrible things? Or what prevents other people from, murdering your family, right? It feels like you need some sort of objective guidelines, some sort of virtuous compass. So some make God out to be like this loving and forgiving entity that can wash your sins away and therefore give forgiveness for everything that was wrong or evil about you, right? Which is a form of judgment. In this sense, it can be medicine for a lot of people, right? This is why people go to church and repent their sins, to wash themselves off this egotistical guilt that was just focused about itself. But then God gets also used to strengthen these judgments for others. And here's where things get very ugly, and human history is filled with horrible nightmares. Christians and Muslims alike tend to be very judgmental people. And this is not by accident. They have a whole lot of self-righteousness with which they condemn others, to put themselves above others. But then they can claim themselves to be humble, because under God, they are also just so small and they can recognize how small they are. But since they are in direct contact with the Almighty God, well, now they can still put themselves above most of the population. So they can play both games. They are infinitely judging and infinitely humble, and then they can justify it for themselves. This is what I also did to some extent. So of course the concept of God is not liked by modern society because it has been so abused. Who wants all this judgment? It's the perfect system for hierarchy and control. So you want to think, let's just throw all of this judgment away, right? Let's not believe in any of this and say that it doesn't matter because God isn't real at all. But don't think you can escape this dynamic by not believing in God. It doesn't work. The difference is that instead of using a cosmical authority figure, you simply become stuck in society, in society's value judgment, and they become your God. And you start to believe that whatever life you're living in the society is like realer than real. For example, are you somebody who has a lot of sexual partners and therefore you have a lot of worth in the sexual marketplace? Or are you a worthless loser who can't get a girlfriend? Now your self-love or your self-worth is tied to this idea, right, of needing other people to validate yourself. Instead of being something cosmical, it's just like a girlfriend. Then women become godlike entities for those who can't find a partner. They become the new standard with which to measure your personal world, your personal worth. Of course, it's super hard to get laid when your entire idea of love means to put yourself underneath somebody. It also makes it so that it's much less attractive for the other person if you devalue yourself. It's like you are not recognizing your own divine nature, and therefore you reject other people. Like other people find you repulsive because you reject your own self-worth. The relationship you have to women actually is a huge indicator of your relationship to yourself. Because in most mystical traditions, and you can find this in a lot of media too, woman or like just the opposite gender is the other. So if God is oneness and true compassion and completeness, the other, like the other gender or the woman, like our primordial separation as humans, they become what you project onto what it means to be another. So a society that hates women or just genders that hate each other show how dysfunctional and sick we are. We are very far from united to whatever unites us. And then on the other side, instead of woman, it could also be just your net worth. How much money do you have? Are you a high value male, or are you a beta, useless, whatever, right? And then you believe in this dream to prove your own value for others. As if once you die, you take your net worth to the afterlife. And then your net worth becomes the checking account, becomes part of the checking account of your God. When you put yourself in the hierarchy of society, suddenly money, fame, or women become your new compass, your new virtue, your new idea of good. Even if you don't realize that this is what you're doing, this is the way you are kind of pegging your own worth to like some imagined currency. The highest good now becomes flipped on its head. Instead of God being selflessness and boundlessness, it becomes ego, it becomes the self, and it all is about you. It's like the nature of the devil is to twist what is good into bad. Money and fame then becomes like your God, but it's actually the devil. And that's what has happened to us. We have become a very, very sick, very unhealthy society. But if you're very perceptive, then you've caught on to what's actually going on. What is it that people are really looking for? Even if you make societal ego judgments, it's still coming from yourself. Like, it is all in your head. The idea of pride and shame is equally delusional. It's all how your brain interprets the value of your life. And believing in becoming an alpha male or rich or famous is not different than dogmatic religious beliefs. You've just found a new delusion, one that might even be harder to break. You just now bought into the dream of life and suffer all of its consequences, as like thinking you are really matter, like that you convinced yourself that it matters. But if you pushed through the delusion and you have remained with enough discernment, or have built discernment in your life, well, all of these collective forms of judgments break down into something way more fundamental. Suddenly you find yourself in a scary place where nothing means anything at all anymore. Reality seems like a fever dream, and you have no idea how you end up here. It's like you played the game of life how it was supposed to be played, but now see that it's all fake to the core. That's what happens to a lot of people who find wealth and success, because there's no ultimate form of judgment that can satisfy you. Nothing will make you feel like you are enough. As long as you're looking for truth outside of you, there's no other way but to doubt. So what you're left with is your own thoughts and your own mind, and your thoughts start to become like the only thing that is real, or the only thing that you can cling to as somebody. Philosophy and understanding of reality then might seem like the last hope to find real understanding, to find something about how all of this works that will finally do the trick. Like this feeling that something can actually dissolve the yearning. And it can. But it can also seem like that there's no way that this can be true. That you really are worthless. A speck of dust in the universe that nobody cares about. And that all your pain, all your suffering is just meaningless. And that it would have been better to never even have existed. Maybe all of this reality was a giant accident and you find yourself trapped in this hell. With no savior to bring yourself out of it. Since God doesn't exist. This stage in one's spiritual development is often referred to as the dark night of the soul. A place of such great hopelessness and despair that the only way out of it is to wake up. You doubt that even the slightest amount of hope for a worthwhile future is possible. And you fall into this doubt so deeply that, yeah, you sense there's no way out. But this is the place, my friend. Here you will stay in until you figure it out. Until you find it. Until you find the groundless truth. And this is where religions personalize it and say that until you find him, right? They want to tell you find God as a person, as if God is somebody you could find. But this is just more ego talking. There's no one to be found. The nihilistic instinct is somewhat true. And it doesn't really matter what you call it, right? This is it. You can see the emptiness. It's an emptiness that is so complete there's nothing left. There you can find what you've been looking for your entire life. The ultimate truth. And it never was foreign to you. It is staring directly at your face. God isn't something that anybody can prove to you. It is not something that anybody can prove to another. God isn't something external or internal that is judging. God is self-evident and shining bright in its unconditional emptiness. Because God is you. All you've been looking for is the justification for reality. Your particular version of it. To see the things how they truly are and that there's nothing to be done about them. Unconditional love means that you truly accept what you are. You truly accept yourself without needing anything external to confirm, deny, or validate your existence. The void inside is what you are. It's a silent acceptance of everything that is. No amount of social validation or imagined judgment can recognize the infinite existence inside of you. It can only be done by the self. There's no hierarchy. There's no real endgame. This is already part of the endgame. There's nothing to reach or aim for. Infinite potential is real. This is what infinity is. And right now you're simply one more instance of it. As long as you're looking for something other than that, other than you, something you can't access, well, as long you will be unsatisfied. Because you can't ever hold on to something that isn't your absolute most profound essence. This essence is so universal, so omnipresent, so all-knowing of everything that is happening, that it can only be seen by complete surrender to what you are in the present. And you can see how this present, like this present moment of experience, this present moment of time, is omnipresent. It is everything. Everything is this presence. There's a deep knowing of what you are when you simply listen to this presence. It's what happens when you let all expectations go of what should be and you look at reality for what it is like. The highest good is accepting all of infinity. Unconditional love is kind of nihilistic because when completely realized, it accepts everything. This means you stop making ultimate distinctions of good and evil. You stop putting anything into hierarchy, so yourself become good enough. There's no need to judge anymore. There's no need to compare anything to anybody. You are free to be what you are. As long as there's an aspect of reality that you don't accept, you won't accept what God is. And as long as you don't accept what God is, you can't unconditionally love yourself. Because what you are calling reality is really just yourself. What else is there? It is your own perception of your own body, your own life, and then reflections of other perceptions of other people's lives. But all reflections are just more things that are real. The reality that you see is real. It happens because it is a reflection of you with so many causes and conditionings, like a chain of events happening. And none of it can be separated from what you are. Every separation is delusion. There's nothing there but yourself. God is nothing but the relationship to yourself. The evil exists only because of the good. You cannot separate them. For heaven to exist, there must be a sacrifice to pay, which is the duality of good and evil. You might have banished Lucifer into hell, but he is still your creation, right? Like, this is also what I always wondered. How can God allow for all of this evil? But yeah, he has to, or none of this would be real, or it would be nothing. An even crazier way to like think about this is think about like typical Big Bang graphs, or like time lapses or timelines of the universe. And then you can see that there's like this point of the Big Bang where supposedly all of the universe started, and you can imagine the Godhead like a point of zero gravity where everything is one, which is the singularity of the Big Bang. And then it has divided itself into endless forms through everything that you see. But what is aware of these divisions and the creation of the universe is the consciousness that is right now looking through your eyes. You are the Godhead. You are the center of the universe. You are the Big Bang, right now manifested in this timeless presence. And you think that you are human. You are thinking yourself into being human. The process of enlightenment is the process to unlearn all of your human conditionings and become fully one with the Godhead again. But not as some like external thing, but like embodied as a human. And this is what makes the human intellect so incredible. You as a human can embody the Godhead. You can be so full of infinite love and bliss that you are constantly in the state. Like taking DMT. Like if you have taken one of these very strong psychedelics, you know what is possible. And this like possibility isn't external because you take some substance, it is actually present. But the funny thing about this is, as long as you want this, right? As long as you want to be forever in some high dream of bliss and love, well, the more you cling to this, the more you're going to go into your ego because you're not selfless about it. The freedom that we have is the product of this process. It's to have the distinction between light and shadow, good and evil, man and woman, that has given us the possibility to be whatever we want. Like, this is it. It's the freedom to be whatever you want. And only you can judge yourself. True evil would be to not allow other beings their autonomy, right? To lock reality into one place and not let change freely. This truly would be a never-ending hell. On this relative plane, it is more like we are trapped in layers of dreaming. And the more you connect to your inner silence, the more you'll wake up. This is what spirituality is about. And most of it gets corrupted because people tend to do more ego stuff and fall deeper into the delusion of the dream. Now, on the relative human level, of course, we can make societal definitions of good and evil that are useful, because unnecessary suffering sucks for all beings. Nothing wants to suffer. Therefore, compassion and avoiding suffering becomes the natural movement once we see that it is all one. That's because truth has no boundaries. Truth has no limits. That's how all powerful it is. So to make it crystal clear, God is omniscient, all powerful, and all loving. This is what reality is. This is what religions have always said. Every fiber and every atom of existence is both the totality and the part of God. There's no singular entity, as the entire empty space of the universe is an expression of it. You encompass all of it. You are both separate, as you are a human, and God itself, as you are the awareness that made it all possible. You've willed it all into existence. If you think that all of this is way too insane and way too crazy to understand, which I grant it really is crazy, but if you want to dive deeper into this self-discovery and also find how your life will start to make way more sense and you feel way freer about what it means to be you, well then I would really watch this video next.